fish population here that kind of just don't go away. They sit in the trench by Jersey. Not as far as I understand that there are guys that I know that work on the dragger boats, and they'll see them out there in December. Yeah. They'll see them in February. Obviously, they have to be quite large to retain enough heat to stay in that water. But most of the time what they'll do is they'll piss off to the Gulf Stream, hang out by the canyon in 3,000 feet of water, 4,000 feet of water, and then they'll spin in if they want to eat. Right now, when it's cold, the predominant forage that they're going to be on is like lollygo squid or ilex squid, which are like the short fin, deep water squid. Yeah, is this on? Yeah, I guess I'll.
Was on.
Yeah, I'll throw it on just for sake of talking points, I guess.
Is the squid that come up at night in the lights the same squid as the deep water squid?
No, inshore those are lollygo squid most of the time, and like smaller ones too. The predominant, like the biomass of them sit on like offshore wrecks between 120 to like 250 feet of water. Those ilex squids, kind of a motherfucker too. They're kind of hard to find in mass, but when you do, that's when you get on those really good like psychotic chunk bites where the yellowfin are like they'll eat anything. Oh yeah, but when do we start looking for them? So it starts end of April, start of May. I actually wrote
For the giants that come on inshore?
Yeah, so they push inshore once the water temp is like 55. Mm-hmm. But that's a general number. Like I said, there are ones that bluefin are kind of hard to put a dot on because you have resident fish that'll stick around in like disgusting green inshore water when it's cold. Like they don't care in the summer. They don't care when it's crystal clear and ice cold in the winter. As long as they have a channel to get back to water where they can sun, which is something they'll do a lot of the time. Tuna, which a lot of people don't know, they actually have 3 eyes. The third one's not technically an eye. It's an evolved trait. It's called a pineal dome. It's on the top of their head, and it tells them water clarity and what's it called? It tells them water clarity and what's it called? Day or night. Day or night, yeah. So this is kind of like the first thing I wanted to like talk about is kind of the structure of Long Island. And how we doing? I'm all right, go. Sit, it's fine. Kind of why Long Island and the general Northeast is a really unique area for tuna fishing and why we kind of have it so good most of the time. And when I talk about this, I'm going to be talking about pretty much everywhere from, Martha's Vineyard north to Rhode Island, all the way obviously down to us in Jersey, which have been where the best of it's been for the last like 3 or 4 years, and all the way down to Maryland, which is kind of like slowed off. In the last couple of years, there's been a very much like a northward trend of these fish coming in. Couldn't tell you why. This is just talking about how the canyons were developed. Obviously, they form over hundreds of thousands of years, probably millions actually. Let's see. Yeah, river valleys. So the water level when this place was formed actually used to be the canyons. Like the canyons proper, that shelf used to be where the ocean like started. And there were like giant ice flows that would come down from the Arctic and, would cut these huge canyons. And the second point here is kind of the most important part is those were very mineral dense and like fertile. They would carry like dead plant matter and all types of dirt and shit. And that's why the bottom here, if you look at it, if you've ever like done any kind of diving or seen any kind of underwater footage here, Long Island's a pretty desolate bank from where the canyons start to where we move inshore. We have a very gradual slope. Obviously, as you know, like up until the canyon, it's only like 400 foot from shore, and it takes 20 miles to get to 100 foot depending on where you are. Obviously, that gets closer. Like you can see the contour lines that get closer as you get close to Montauk and stuff. But those deposits are what kind of laid the groundwork for all the wonderful like eelgrass and sand eels and phyto and zooplankton that bunker and all these bait species, forage on. And obviously, if you want the pelagics and stuff, you got to have the bait first. Bait is number one with everything. That's going to be kind of the next slide.
Everyone, like, it's technically not even 7 yet. People,
Yeah.
like, trickle in later.
Yeah, I don't mind.
7:05.
Yeah, I mean, if I have to,
There's a lot to talk about.
yeah, if I have to run back, or if you, like I said, if you guys have a shout out for any like particular thing you want to know about anything, if I can give some insight, I will. Also, everything I say, grain of salt. I've been doing this for 10 or 12 years, and that's just like fishing in general. Like, I'm only 24. Obviously, I've been doing it a lot more than a lot of people have, just because I've had a lot of opportunity with it. But it's
Hey, there's your water bottle.
I think so.
Yeah, that's videoing. What?
All right, cool.
It is?
Yeah, no. So, like I said, take everything with a grain of salt, because it's not like it's very difficult to get a hard science. Like, tracking tuna and understanding their migratory, reproductive, and like feeding habits are not a very refined science. It's something that people invest a lot of money into, especially the people that like import and export them, like ICAT, which is the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tuna. Can't believe I remembered that. They spend a lot of money tagging these things and trying to get good data on like why they do the weird things that they do, so that hopefully, our kids can catch them too one day, because that's really the goal. All right, yeah, so like we were talking about before, these are like some of the main forage species, except for that guy down in the corner. We'll talk about that in a second. Is it good?
Yeah, no, you're good. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, so that, if you've fished in Long Island ever, our yellow-eyed, pointy-toothed friend. It's a bluefish. Fantastic oily bait. They can be found inshore all the way out to like 120, 150 foot of water. Not readily, but they're awesome inshore forage for giant tuna that come inside. Also, if you don't know, bluefin tuna they have the most proclivity to come inshore and feed. And when I say that, I mean like inside of 60 miles, all the way up to like the beach. Yellowfin, very rarely, unless we have a big eddy current funneling that like canyon water, which is something we'll talk about. I'll talk about that later too. I kind of have these all mixed up. But like an eddy is essentially when colder inshore water, and this hot water that comes north from Florida from the Gulf Stream spins off. Right, you have either like the most common is like a hot water centered eddy, which means it spins counterclockwise. If you're looking at Long Island, like, can I go back? Yeah, like it'll come up here and it'll spin inshore this way and it'll work its way down the bank. These things can be 5 miles wide. They can be 100 miles wide. They can move at a mile a day. They can move at a mile a minute. We had one last year that sat here above Beach, Atlantis, and Hydrographer Canyon for 2 months. Like, did not move. That kind of sucks for us because we rely on that to bring in, cool shit like marlin and, wahoo, dolphin, you name it, like dolphin the fish, mahi, not dolphin. But yeah, so eddies will spin in. They'll funnel that deep blue, clear, nutrient-dense hot water into our inshore flat. We'll call it a bank. Anything that's not like down here, this is what we refer to as the bank. Where's I going with that? Oh yeah, just finding bait and stuff. So these are like our predominant forage. Those in the top right are butterfish. Those are you'll find them inshore sometimes. They're mostly an offshore school fish. They are extremely fatty, tons of omega oils in them, so they're really, really good. They stink. They make a wonderful slick when you cut them up and chunk them. That's like the number one bait that we use when we're chunking for yellowfin. You know,
Super fun to cut all night long.
absolutely, which is something that we try not to do either. Yeah, like I always recommend if you have to cut bait. Yeah, go ahead.
I've done that.
Yeah, I always say, like, if you got to cut bait, especially when you're cutting a lot of it, like we go through on like a commercial chunk day, or if we're trying to like, you know, kill mission, take as many as we can, we'll cut 200-300 pounds of bait. You know, like if it's a 100-pound tote that we're putting the bait in, we'll fill up anywhere from like 3 to 10 of those to go chunk them, because, you know, if the bite's there and you want to shovel off, like you're throwing bait off the side of the boat essentially to keep them around, you don't want to run out. And the other thing too is, like, if it's blowing 15 out of the northeast and that boat is rocking back and forth, you don't want some joker in the back with the brand new Dexter cutting bait to go ahead and put it through his hand. Done that. Sucks.
I've done that too. I cut it like right here.
Yeah, it's brutal.
And then also, I noticed that when you go yellowfin fishing, like 70 miles right before the canyon.
Yeah.
I know, like Triple Rocks and stuff.
Bacardi, yeah.
I noticed that they have a lot of sand eels.
Tons. Well, yeah, that's so when I said the one fish that I forgot to put up here, arguably the most important forage that we have is sand eels. So if you've ever seen them, they look like little silver shoestrings. They are, I think there's a species of, they're not a true eel. I think they're, Grenard is what their technical name is, but they are skinny little fish. They sit in the bottom in the sand, hence the name. And then during the daytime, typically when the sun rises, like first light, you'll get a rise of them on the screen. They, like, if you look on a screen like a fish finder, it looks like spaghetti all over the screen. That's them rising out of the sand to eat all sorts of little dead plant matter and all the shit in the water. And then they'll go back down, then they'll rise again at like high noon, and they'll rise again before, like in the afternoon, and then they'll do another one in the evening, and you kind of time your fishing around that, because usually when you're trolling, what you're imitating is the profile underneath of a school of sand eels. That's what our trolling lures typically look like, you know, when you're pulling lures behind the boat. Do you want to ask something? You're good? Oh, sorry, I thought you were asking me something. Yeah, these are our inshore offshore squid. This is a lollygo squid. These predominantly stick between, you know, these will come into harbors at night and stuff. You can find them on the North Shore sometimes. Or actually, you definitely find them on the North Shore. All the way out to like 120, 200 foot of water. Mostly in the canyon, you're going to be dealing with these. These are ilex squids or short fin squid. But star of the show.
They're pretty big compared to like inshore.
Yeah, it depends. You know, you get some of them like 12, 13 inches. But usually for fishing, you want, again, that candy size, like 8 inch, you know, like that's like the one you want. They're also a pain too, because if you're fishing any kind of like dead baits, like a sardine or a mackerel, they'll attack that, which is annoying because they'll come up looking like a cartoon fish, like you'll just get a skeleton back and a head where the hook is. But it's also not a bad thing, because if there's yellowfin around, if the squid are eating it on the hook, the yellowfin will come through and they'll actually eat it off the hook with it. But arguably the most important, if you had one bait to pick, that would be your guy. That is the Atlantic menhaden, bunker, pogie. They have a million names. They are a herbivorous fish. They filter feed.
Oh, planktonic if you want.
Yeah, sure. They filter feed. Yeah, dirt, basically. Yeah, they eat all the kind of shit in the water column. They clean our water really well. They are super fatty and oily. Actually, one of the big reasons why they get fished for, they get netted actually in very large quantities, like hundreds of tons every year, is because the oil in them is super valuable for fish oil pills and actually perfume.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a perfume base. A lot of animal product, if you've ever used one, and cologne too, like any like fragrance base, fish oil's a good place to start. It's a substitute for like actually whale oil. That's where it came from what I understand. In the bottom right, that's a ballyhoo. That's a southern, southeastern species of bait. They freeze really well. They're shiny, and the big reason why people mass export them up here to fish with, especially when we go trolling, is they swim really well. So we'll actually rig, this is like a pin rig, so you'll actually thread this hook through the ballyhoo, and then this pin here, you'll stick that through the top jaw and wrap either a piece of wire or like a little spiral, I don't even know how you would call, like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like the spiral metal tube.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that? You just wind that
over the pin, and it keeps that thing on the hook and in line. And they make a fantastic trolling bait because they swim really well. They wag behind any kind of lure that you're pulling behind the boat. They look exactly like something delicious, and that's a really good bluefin, yellowfin, kind of everything bait. And even if you don't rig it behind, like that has like a blue skirt in front of it, but we rig them naked a lot of the time if we have no kind of idea what we're doing, if we're just kind of scouting, driving around, seeing what we're, looking for, trying to get a piece of whatever's out there.
Why do you do that approach without the skirt?
Subtlety. Naked ballyhoo is like sneaky. It's a very subtle kind of.
A little quick bite.
Yeah, they're a lot more, especially if you're fishing like a lighter fluorocarbon leader in front of it. Yeah, exactly. They'll see it and come up and look for it because a lot of tuna fishing too is based on sound. Sound is a huge, factor that plays into it. Let me see what we have like next here. Yeah, so this is kind of like general points for kind of what I've been talking about. Canyon versus inshore fishery. Definitely two schools of thought. So inshore throughout the year, our season in Long Island typically goes from end of May, June, because you still kind of have cold fronts that'll come through and make the weather really nasty. You can fish it early spring. It can be done, but it's not necessarily like the most fun. You're liable to get the shit kicked out of you, but we like...
challenge.
Yeah, if you're determined to get after them, it's definitely...
A lot of people would you say a lot of boats are just based on what they're going for? Are they going more for bass until like...
Yeah, and a lot of people fish on reports too. That's a big, there's no more secrets in tuna fishing. With all the podcasts that are out and with all the information that you can glean offline if you just do your homework and read.
If you're not,
It is, yeah, and it's really good to do your due diligence. But another thing that I'm going to talk about later is like understanding, and this goes for any type of fishing, because it's something that I've seen a lot in my time, trends and reports. People get something in their head where it's like, if somebody posts, hey, I caught this fish that you want to catch, but it was on this lure at this time of day, people get kind of attached to that, and it'll kind of put blinders on them. And I've seen it a dozen times, like in tournament settings, and where, guys have this Usain Bolt running mindset where they just they have a dot that they got from their friend who caught him the day before, right? And they will drive past whales and dolphins and 100 birds diving into the water because that's their spot, right? But why wouldn't you just pull the throttles back? Dude, just try. What's the worst that happens? You burn half an hour, and it's not as dependent on first light, last light, tide. I've had a dozen big eye bites in broad daylight, where if you talk to somebody that is 50 years old, they'll tell you you're only going to hook them at 7 in the morning and you'll hook them at 5 at night. It's no, absolutely not. I know it's not because I've seen it. Yeah, right, exactly. It's just use your eyes and building that confidence and instinct, having the intuition to say, to look at the water and say because there's a lot of tuna out there. It's a lot of water to cover, but there's a lot of fish out there, and they're very broadly scattered. The other thing too is these fish on average, tuna swim between 5 and 12 miles an hour, So within an hour of the day, the same body of fish that were at, a piece 25 miles away could be on top of you or past you already. So seizing the opportunity is a big thing, striking while the iron's hot. If you have a bite going, not abandoning that. Never leave, like I don't like to leave fish for fish necessarily. So tactics and techniques. So predominantly in Long Island, you have, or the Northeast in general, you have your bait fishing, which is comprised of live bait fishing, right? Chunking, and that's about it. You have your artificial fishing, which is your jig and pop, which is where you're going to be actively looking for life like whales, birds, dolphin, marking bait on the bottom, slicks of oil on the water. Again, that's another thing that I harp on people all the time. Use your eyes. You can smell fish oil when it's in the water. What it smells like? Watermelon. Yeah. It has a smell, and once you've been out there, you'll get to realize these things. You get to wash the water. You'll even see sometimes rain bait or little smaller tunas like bonito and false albacore jumping on the top of the water. That's a great thing to key in on. Any kind of life, tuna are prone to be around. I can tell you from drone footage, I have a good friend, Sutton, who takes videos out east all the time. When we have those massive pods of bunker, I don't know if you can raise your hand if you've ever seen a pod of bunker before, like in the water. It looks like, for anybody who hasn't, it looks like a brown stain in the water, and they school up. They're bait fish. They're, say they're dumb, but herd mentality. They want to stay safe from these things. And sometimes bluefin, you can observe this inshore, offshore, anywhere with all sorts of different fish, mostly tuna though. They will, even if they're not feeding, right, they will mill around with bait. It's like they can't pull themselves away from it. And even if they're not feeding, trust me, you'll see them sometimes, will throw lures on top of them. You could put a live bunker a foot in front of their face and they won't touch it until they want to eat. And whatever triggers that is up to anybody's speculation. It's not like there's a real science to what makes them decide that they want to start chewing, but life attracts life is what I'm trying to say. At some point it will go off. They will decide to eat. So our trolling is essentially, if you don't know, it entails pulling any sort of artificial lure or lure plus bait presentation behind the boat to imitate a school of fish. Now, this is effective because you have the silhouette from underneath that looks like, obviously, a school of bait fish. There are a variety of lures that either create bubble trails in the water or stir the surface up. You obviously have the noise from the boat and the silhouette of the boat, which is also a huge deal. It looks like a whale most of the time, or it looks like something going on. If for nothing else, they'll come and check it out for... Yeah, go ahead.
How far off do you troll for tuna? I mean, how much of a line do you have that?
So it depends. It depends the lure you're using. But typically, the way we do it is your outside lures or anything off the corners of the boat, side trackers, if you've ever seen one. I didn't have one to bring in, but it's basically it's a long piece of wire that has a plastic bulb that has a fin on it, and it'll kick it out to either side of the boat, right? And then they have long pieces of line on them themselves, and then a long one in the center that has, I wish I had a picture of one. It's kind of tough to... Yeah, can I look shit up on here, or you want to be my wingman here and look up a spreader bar for me? And then we also, so typically a shotgun bait we'll put which is the center one, we'll start in the middle of the boat and work out, and we're picture you're staring at the back of the boat when you're driving, right? Yeah. Center one we'll put out 200 feet, right? Far back away, and that'll be just a very sneaky, small presentation, naked ballyhoo, single plastic, tail, rubber tail or something, just something small. Yeah, exactly, like a Ronzi or a slug, like a Sluggo or something like that. When we're in the canyons, we'll pull diving lures, big lipped diving lures that sit on the corners. Those will usually run either right underneath the prop wash or 20 foot below the boat, right? And those things rattle. They make a ton of noise. We actually did an experiment this past summer where I got in the water with a friend of mine, and we had our buddy drive past us, and he started about a mile, I think half a mile away from us, as soon as he put those diving lures in the water, you could hear them. Even before that, you could hear the lures that we had in the boat. You know, it sounds like it's right on top of you because sound moves way faster in fluid mediums than it does in atmosphere. Like, you can hear it from way further away.
So they don't get scared of the boat at all? Or not really?
It depends. Not typically, again, because these fish are so conditioned to boat traffic and having boats around, they really don't mind. I will say one thing, though. There are certain motors, whether it be diesel or outboards, that attract fish and ones that don't. Like, there are certain motors that, it's called raising them, that raise them, and there are certain ones that just don't. I don't know what the science is behind there. I haven't seen any like frequency analysis that says that one's better than the other, but it's definitely a thing though. Like, I know that certain Detroit diesels in sport fishing boats, right, raise them. Like, they drive past and you'll watch. Like, there could be two guys next to each other, same boat, different motors, same lures. Drive past, one guy will get bit, one guy won't. It's like, why? I don't know. It's just like kind of, they're wacky like that. And again, tuna are not a subspecies, but a cousin. Yeah, this is a spreader bar, by the way. So these, as your trail, these imitate a school of fish, whether it be a school of bait fish or a school of sand eels. Another thing I get questions on a lot too is color, right? Like, what's the go-to color? There is no go-to color. The go-to color is what you're most confident in pulling. Some people will say darker colors create more contrast during certain points of the day. You know, everybody's got a story. All that matters is that it works for you. Again, the common denominator in people that are good at it and who catch a lot of fish and who don't is time on the water and experience. And that's kind of the pain in the ass about tuna fishing, is it's a big accessibility thing. But that's also what's cool about bluefin and this native species that we have up here, is because they're a lot, like, if you can go bass fishing on the South Shore of Long Island, you can, you know, in the fall, you are liable to catch tuna. Like, you have a real chance at hooking a bluefin, you know, because they're eating the same thing, they're in the same areas. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, because like me and Frank both lifeguard, and I spend every week pretty much 40 hours or more every week at the ocean, and like, I'll see bluefin right there, and I'll paddle out.
Yeah, they don't care. I mean, there were drone videos from like 2 years ago of guys swimming on the beach and you could see them.
I know, they're there.
You know, they don't
It's just
care.
a matter of, you know, if you have a rod there, and you're right at a rock. I mean,
You know, yeah, and that's why, like, you know, having, like, I would say, like, if you wanted like the easiest into tuna fishing, right? The easiest way to like potentially go catch one is first get your HMS permit. If you want to go tuna fishing, you have to do it legally, right? The highly migratory species permit can be purchased through the NOAA website or the New York State Fisheries Management website. Have to have it if you want to target them, period, end of story. Even if you want to go soak a bait for sharks, you have to get that and get your shark endorsement. It's like a 5-question quiz that they'll ask you about shark anatomy. But yeah, so that's why I was saying, like, the jig and pop thing has kind of, that's another style of fishing, which is like kind of the setups that I have here, which is a large, you know, if you know fish, like spinning reel sizes, this is like a 25,000 size, this is quite large. This is like for giant tuna, but anything from like, I would say like a 14 or an 18,000 size reel, which can be had from, you know, $400 or $500 all the way up to something like this, which is obviously, you know, this is a Saltiga, it's like a $1,300 reel. You don't need this to go do it. But again, those bluefin that are inshore, they're in hot water. They have a lot of energy and they're bastards. Like, they will screw you up. And if you plan on eating the things that you're going to fish for and kill, because again, anytime you hook one of these things, you put them under incredible amounts of stress and lactic acid buildup. So if you plan on harvesting one, it's important that you rather have tackle that's too big than tackle that's too small. Because if you have tackle that's too big, you can loosen the drag, have fun with it. Like, you can, like, I promise you, they'll still pull on a big setup the same way they will on a smaller one. But it's better to go bigger than smaller and have the right equipment and do it once the right way than potentially lose the fish because you didn't have heavy enough tackle, or by the time you fight the thing for 3 hours and have it next to the boat, the meat is like cat food, because lactic acid buildup in tuna meat gives it a very like vinegar, nasty. It actually, like if you look at the meat, it'll turn a different color. And that's why harvesting methods are very important too. The way that you kill a tuna when you get it next to the boat, you know, bleeding it out properly, right? Putting it in a slurry. You don't just leave it on top of ice. It's not like another fish. Ideally, what you want is like enough ice to cover it, and then you put salt water in it, or you put fresh water in with the ice and then salt it. That creates a brine. It lowers the freezing temperature of the water so you can get it closer to freezing temperatures. And that's how you want to store your fish. The other thing we do is we core them, right? What does that mean? Cut the head and tail off, and you remove the guts right there. Like it happens right next to the boat as soon as you kill that fish. Because the core temp can range 20 degrees higher, especially when you're catching these fish in water that's already hot. In end of July, these fish could be in 70 plus degree water. You know, if it's 70 degrees on the outside of their meat, the core temp after an hour-long fight could be pushing 85 degrees, you know, and that's no bueno for eating fish. You don't want that, trust. Another important thing, and again, we're talking about harvest here, so it sounds barbaric if you've never seen it done, but having a nice, strong knife, or some people use a fish spike, it's something that hits the brain. You know, you line it up right between their eyes behind them, and you dispatch them next to the boat. You'll see them, the color changes because they have photophores in their skin, which can actually change the color of the fish. They'll kind of tense up, freak out, right? And it's a nervous reaction, but what you're doing is by dispatching it and essentially cutting off the nervous system, you don't have lactic acid buildup and histamine buildup, which is, again, how you cook the fish, you get that nasty yellow meat. So that's all very important considerations to take into before you do this. Because like I said, like with the way things are, politely, any Tom, Dick, or Harry can go hook one of these things. Like, it's not as rare as it used to be. Like how do I put it? Our worst day of fishing now, 10 years ago, would have been seen as like, you know, would have made the news. But now the concentration is so heavy that so many people want to go out and do it, and it really is so much more accessible than it used to be, that taking the extra day or taking the extra month to set up and make sure you have all the right gear, whether that's borrowing it from somebody that you know, or, you know, taking somebody with you that has it, right? Like making it a team thing. Because again, the other thing too is like, I guarantee there's not a person in this room that has enough friends to get rid of all the meat on like a 60-inch bluefin. It's just like most people don't. You know, most people don't know what to do with it.
Culinary club. So
Shit, man. If you got friends in low places who would buy it, which I will not openly endorse, you know.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna have another question about so like we were saying with
I know I'm kind of going off on a lot of tangents
So
here.
that-
It's kind of hard for me to like wrap it back in. So
So back to like when you said you bleed out the fish.
Yeah.
EKG
Yeah.
obviously, so
That's-
bleeding out. What's the point of the spine? Because I know there's like a third step in EKG.
right. Okay. So ikejime can be done on any fish. If anybody doesn't know what that is, it's a Japanese fish preservation method, and it does exactly what I just said before. It's just a different mode of doing it, but it encompasses 90% of the steps I just gave. It's all the same. The only difference is after you spike that fish, right? Like you get the fish next to the boat, right? First things first, we spike the fish. That's it, right? Lights out. It's done. So anything that happens after this fish is not suffering, despite it's still moving. They move quite a lot after they're dead. You cut the tail and expose the spinal cord, right? The cervical spine. And an ikejime kit will come with various gauges and lengths of wire, like cable. And what you're going to do with that is you thread the wire up through the spine. That is the most surefire way to eliminate any sort of histamine saturation through the meat. Afterwards, you will cut the gills, right? Expose the artery that sits underneath the spine, but behind the gill, right? and you can either put a hose to it or flush it. You just want to get all that blood that's full of that stuff, because the circulatory system will keep going. A tuna's heart will keep beating for 10, 15, 20 minutes after it's dead, typically, right? So long as it doesn't die on the hook, which is something that can happen with large fish with heavy exertion. Sometimes they'll have a heart attack. And the other thing that's weird too is like sometimes the heart will stop beating and they'll keep kicking. Like there's been plenty of fish that we kill that are like stone dead. They're like white pretty much. You know, the blood is barely moving through them, but they're still just paddling their tail because the nervous system is still intact. So that's kind of the idea behind it. But that's how you ensure the best quality of meat that you're going to get off these fish. And that goes along with proper icing, right? Like
For fish
getting
that are expensive, I mean, every bit that you can do to, you know.
Yeah, right. Like any high-end tuna that's sold overseas or here is going to be done in that manner, for the most part. And that's kind of the storage and harvest section covered up. Migration and timing, like I said, so we get our first, push of bluefin that are seriously feeding, and this is going to be mostly sight fishing. They're not going to be keyed in super hard on like big balls of bait or whatever. These are going to be mostly milling fish that are making their migration north to breed. These fish go from Virginia, the Carolinas, they run their way north up past Martha's Vineyard all the way up to Nova Scotia to breed, or so we think, from what I understand, through the months of like June through end of July, early August. Then they kind of shut down. They're not as accessible, and that's bluefin we're talking about. The yellowfin are kind of on a different schedule, and I'll go over that next. And then they make their way back down. Yeah.
Can you talk about albacore tuna?
Yeah, absolutely. So albacore or longfin tuna, they're going to follow a very similar program to yellowfin. They are pretty freaking elusive. We don't get them in numbers that we used to. Most of the time you're going to hook those things are going to be in the canyons when you're fishing for yellowfin, right? So you could almost say anything that applies to like yellowfin fishing, you can apply to cover that with albacore. The only ones that really have outliers in fishing technique are like your bluefin, because they cover such a ridiculously large migration path, right? And different sizes of fish do different things, right? Like those 60 plus inch fish are going to be prone to come inside, like they don't mind, but you won't find those smaller schoolie fish, we call them, like 40 inches and under. You won't really find those inshore within 30 miles the same way you would with those, right? Like the closest you'll see them is like I said, like 30-mile line, and then further is where you're going to find those mid-sized bluefin following that migration north. And then there's big eye tuna. Those are, again, one of the predominant canyon species. Big eye, obviously referring to the size of the eye, really big. They want to take in as much light as possible. They're a little bit rounder. They look like, they kind of look like big yellowfin. They're very rotund. They're thicker than they are long. They are a deep water tuna species. They hang out in no less than 400 to 500 feet typically. They don't really, you won't really find them inshore ever. If you do, something wrong with it. It just doesn't happen very often. But those fish hang with pilot whales, and they forage mostly on snake mackerel and bigfin squid in depths in excess of, like I said, 400 feet to 1,000 foot. It's not rare that you'll be sword fishing in 1,400 foot of water and catch a big eye. It's not a obscene thing that happens. It actually happens, with some. Yeah, go ahead.
When you say inshore, what is like the range?
So when I say inshore, I'm talking about that bank. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if you were here before. If you saw this picture. So when I talk about inshore, by the way, that's everything, I'll say, shallower than 400 foot. And that'll encompass everything from like here to the beach. I'm talking about typically, right? Good. Yeah. So big eye can be had with a variety of tactics, trolling. Oh, they're also a school fish. They're predominantly known for striking in packs too, called wolf packs. You know, that's just like kind of what we call them when we fish for them. It's very rare to catch like, you know, one big eye. Most of the time you'll catch 1, 2, 3, 6. It's not uncommon if you have 6 rods that you're trolling for all 6 of them to go down with big eye. Like, you know, they're very prone to doing that. But that's also why when I mentioned before, when we troll, having something that makes noise, if you can imagine how far that travels on the surface layers, when you get down to like the scattering layer, which is where light starts to dissipate in the canyons, you know, in like hundreds of feet of water, if they can hear it, it'll raise them up. You know, they'll come up and check out what that noise is as a school. And they'll send one, right? One rod will go down, and then the rest of them will follow, and they'll eat your whole spread up. They can also be had chunking, which is, you know, an art in and of itself, which is kind of the art of just throwing bait off the side of the boat until a bunch of tuna decide to come chew, which is an art. It's not as simple as it sounds. You know, there's a million ways to skin a cat. Some people get lucky. They'll just shovel off bait. But there is like a program to it. A lot of these tuna, when they're on a chunk bite, which usually happens at night, you know, end of the day, evening, going into the nighttime, why they decide that they want to, like, you know, sorry. Again, when I say grain of salt, can you catch fish on the troll at night? Absolutely. Can you catch them chunking during the day? Without a doubt. Typically, though, when the sun goes down, we'll troll an hour or two after sundown and then pull the spread in, stop the boat. We'll go find a nice drift, and you're basically drifting the boat along, you know, a ridge or a depth line that you like, or a curve, or a temperature break, which is like arguably the biggest, you know, I know there was a question that I got about temp breaks and why they're so important, and we'll get to that in a second. But finding a piece that you want to target, whether that be a patch of water where it blends from that inshore water to that offshore water, and you'll be able to see that too. If you ever get out to the canyons, or it'll even happen inshore sometimes. If you go to the beach, one day it'll be, you know, Jones Beach, green, brown water, 1 foot visibility, and then you'll go out, you know, a week later, and it'll be this almost translucent blue-purple. That's canyon water. That's water that has spun off an eddy that has come all the way up to the beach, you know. And like I said, they can be very, very large. So it's not uncommon for that to bring in. And that blend of temperatures is what you want to fish on. That's how that works typically. And I have more on that too.
Now, so you have the warm water and the cold water. So the fish will hang out in the warm water and then come in. And
so I actually made these are like kind of like seasoned notes that I've made about this. Typically, right, if you're fishing, you know, a break between 57 and 64 degree water, right? Cold inshore water meets hot offshore water. You want to fish that, you don't want like a hard break in temperature. If you're on a vessel that you can measure water temp, right? Or you have a sea surface temperature readout from like a satellite or something, there's a bunch of services that offer that. We like to fish the blend, so that like, you know, 61 degree water. You don't want to fish where it's like, you know, you drive 20 feet with the boat and it goes 5 degrees different. That attracts sharks and whales and all sorts of shit that you don't want to catch. You want to fish like, in industry, it's known as the tent, you know, like a 1 degree break, right? Where it goes from like, you know, 62 to 64, or it goes from 52 to 54, like, you know, like a soft break, or even like a half degree temperature break. Because what that does is the water density physically changes, and when the bait hits it, right, they'll stay on the cold side, but they'll sit right on that edge where those two types of water meet, and the tuna will sit on the warm side, and they'll eat. They'll run into the cold side, eat, go back, and kind of in a spiral, they'll do that for, you know, however long they decide they want to chew. This is kind of, okay, so these are kind of just general talk tips. If you have one, you have none. This is just, like I said before, trip planning. You know, if you and your buddy both go out and buy tuna setups, you want to go catch a bluefin off the beach, or you want to go try and chunk a yellowfin, don't bring one rod. Don't bring two rods. Bring as many as you can, right? And make sure everything's set up right. Redundancy is a big deal, because if you want to do it efficiently and make the most of, because again, whether you're paying for a charter or going out yourself, or you have a friend that's going to take you out, it is a big financial undertaking, and you want to make the most of that time, and you want to make the most of that experience. So it pays to do as much homework as you can on it and make sure that everything is ironed out well before you step on the boat. You know, that's kind of something that a lot of people take for granted. You know, that's kind of what I have to say about that. Prepping right, checking your knots, right? Making sure that you splurge and buy fluorocarbon and not monofilament leader, right? Like, making sure that all your connections are good, making sure that your drag is set properly. If you have a scale, or even if you don't have a scale, if you know you have a dumbbell that weighs 20 pounds, right, or 15 pounds, you can tie that to your rod and know exactly how much drag that rod puts out, so that when you hook the thing, it doesn't just topple over and pop the rod, and that's a big deal with fighting them too. You want to minimize, as fun as tuna fishing is, you actually want to minimize the amount of time that you're fighting the thing to preserve the quality of the meat, because you're going to eat the thing. Tuna are delicious. Like that's, I would say, most of the reason why people fish for them. It's certainly why I do. Like, I love eating them.
What's your favorite one to eat?
Oh, I like them all. Bluefin belly, probably. Yeah, bluefin's probably my favorite to eat, just because they're so, fatty.
And back to are the regulations the same as last year with bluefin on how many you can keep? You can keep one. One bigger.
So far as I know, I believe so. I'd have to check the regs again, but yeah. Again, using your senses was kind of that spiel that I gave before about not driving past signs of life to go find a report or something like that. What else?
Now, you said the bait will rise up.
Yeah.
Do you find that happens? Does that coincide with the moon rise, sunrise?
Sunrise definitely for the sand eels predominantly. They'll follow certain times of day. You won't really find them out at night. Most of the time at night, when the water temp drops, they'll bury themselves into like the hot mud to preserve body temp. But yeah.
What about moon phases though? Like, would you say it's as important as like striper fishing, or would you say it's less important? That's tricky because there's so many factors already.
Yeah, I don't want to say jury's out on it, but like tide and moon phase are definitely a key, which is kind of what ties into here. What's it called? What was I going to say before? Shit, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second.
It's tough, because if you're going to plan a tuna trip just based on the moon phase and not all the other factors, I feel like preparation and getting out there and time is even more important than the moon itself. I don't know. It's tough. So
the backside of a full moon is my superstitious like prime time for when I like to fish for them. I wouldn't say that that's like a hard line. Yeah, I'd much rather fish like a temperature break or, life, than worry about where the moon is. And also, like, a lot of people don't have the luxury to pick,
the schedule.
It's like, yeah, like we're going this day. It's like, okay, yeah, we're going this day. Right.
Even if you have the nicest, biggest boat, like the weather, so much.
Yeah,
times,
it doesn't really matter. Like, some of the best tuna fishermen in the world, the common divider between them and the guy that has, the $12 million boat with $50,000 in tackle is how much he goes out and how much he does it, and how much you can read the water and learn, the trends that these things follow, to kind of get a better picture of why they do what they do and when they eat when they do. So it's kind of subjective, and it pays to listen to the people that have done it before you, and also never stop like asking questions or thinking about things, which is also like keeping records, right? That's huge. I have a logbook that goes back 6 years to the day, to the minute, you know, with some very basic like notes if something was weird, you know, that I can go back and reference. Following the logs is a very, very important aspect of this, you know, because they are not predictable, but they do tend to repeat themselves year to year. Even if it's not to date, they'll follow a general, like an annual trend, you know, whether it's off by a week, the bluefin and yellowfin coming in at different times, you know, the big eye turning on in the fall when they go from demolishing anything that moves to now we just want to eat dead bait, you know, chunk baits. Like, why? For whatever reason, they'll do that. Typically, it's like I have it written here. Like my general note is like the backside of the full moon in August, right? It goes from like a very heavy chunk bite in the or a troll bite in the canyon to a chunk thing where they want to eat dead baits off the back of a boat, you know, because is that because when, you know, the draggers start working? Again, if anybody doesn't know, the biggest, I would say, the biggest offshore draw for these tuna sometimes are the dragger boats. These are, you know, they come from everywhere from Virginia to Rhode Island. They drive up and down the East Coast depending on where the biomass of life is, and they drag these big metal chain nets, whether it's along the bottom or the mid-water column, and they are netting. They net everything, but they're obviously looking to harvest certain types of squid or bait fish. And after these things have been caught in the net, right, you know, obviously some dangle out, the tuna will follow these boats and pick off everything that these boats throw back that they can't keep. That's called hauling back. Or when the net's moving and stirring up the bottom, it stirs up the sand eels and the butterfish and all the shit on the bottom. And they will run their noses into the net, picking shit out of it. And that's how we chunk most of the time is you find a dragger, right, that's working. You'll pull up next to them. And because you have your own bait, you'll start to peel off pieces of bait, right, 3, 4, 5 at a time. And you'll watch on the fish finder as your boat moves away from theirs, those fish will start eating your chunks instead, right? And again, this is why noise is a big deal. Sometimes we'll bring metal chains out because it sounds like the metal chain net. We'll bang them in the water next to the boat, and these fish will go ballistic. I have videos of yellowfin chewing the paint off the bottom of the boat because they think we're a dragger and we're just throwing off everything we have. That's when you can get them to eat a fucking Snickers bar. Like, it doesn't matter what you throw in the water. Like, you know, they'll eat it because they get into these feed modes. We just call them going suicidal, and you know, they'll eat artificial lures. They'll eat anything you throw at them when they're like that. An important note to be made about that is anytime you're fishing for bluefin or yellowfin on draggers or chunking them, typically the way things will go is if they're not already going ballistic, they will send in the school, they'll send a scout fish. And this is kind of important if you ever get to do the chunking thing. That first fish that you hook, you have to land that thing. That's the differentiation most of the time between a night where you catch or a day when you catch 50 fish or 5 fish. You know, that first fish has to come to the boat. Because if you break that thing off or release it or something and it goes back to that school and it's all spooked out or stressed out, it'll shut the rest of them off. They'll get lockjaw. They won't eat anymore, like, or as much as they would otherwise. It's a very strange thing. And that'll cause you to have to go down in leader size because they get line shy. Most of the time when we do that, we're fishing anywhere between, you know, 80-pound all the way down to like 40-pound fluorocarbon, which is miserable because, like, you know, 40's strong, but tuna have teeth, you know, even though they're small. And their bodies themselves are abrasive to leader material, and you could actually chafe them off next to the boat. So you want to fish as heavy as possible, but, you know, obviously, again, when they get into that psychotic feed mode, you could put a fucking piece of rope in the water, and, you know, you could hook them on that. doesn't matter. But most of the time, you want to size your leader appropriately, to the size and class of fish that you're catching, and also to the like how line shy these things are. So it's a lot to think about. I know that I'm throwing a lot at you guys who maybe if you've never done it before, it's kind of like daunting to look at all of it. But staple things, right? Like good connections, right? And understanding how to read, like the life in the water. If you mark a big ball of something in the water, fish that, like, little things like that are just like kind of staples that you can do to at least have your best odds at finding one of them.
You mentioned how it was like worse 10 years ago. Like, why is it better now? Like conservation or just like warmer?
Who knows? Migratory path. There was a time where it sucked up here, and when it sucked up here, it was fantastic in Virginia and Maryland. Now you can't pay. Like, there are charter guys that run out tuna charters, and they do, mahi fishing and tile fishing, and even some like light bill fishing for like white and blue marlin, just to catch something, or just to put meat in the boat, because they don't have the same amount of tuna. One area that's been pretty consistent, and it's known for that, is Cape Cod, and Montauk as well. And the trend there, the reason why that is because I think the next slide I have, so so this is a different kind of view of what the canyons actually look like. This is just on Google Earth, by the way. All these canyons have names, but you can kind of see how as you move further north and northeast, right, at least before Rhode Island, the canyon pushes pretty close to Nantucket and Cape Cod here. This is a lot easier of a trip for a migrating fish to make, like inshore, especially for bluefin, than somewhere in Long Island where you have to cover 80 miles before you get close to like the mass of the forage that there is to be had inshore. So Cape Cod's kind of a steady thing, but we share most of that body of fish. Let's see what we got here. So I kind of talked about temp breaks too. That's like, like I said, those spinning current patterns and stuff. Talked about water movement, talked about tents.
Water. The last like 10 minutes or so here, 5-10 minutes. You want to everyone come up and like check out?
Yeah, I can definitely. The other thing I want to do too is like I'll kind of shut up here and actually there's one more slide that kind of has something important, which I've been touching on this whole time, is understanding that this game that we play with these things is a big time commitment. It's a big monetary commitment. It's not a very accessible thing, and I would say, time and experience on the water, most important. Your expectations of what you're going to see when you go out there. For as good as the people are that I fish with, the catch rate on these things is still pretty low. They're tricky. It's not an easy thing to go out and be good at. So, temper yourself for your first time out there. Please.
Are they like catchable only where you're like on the boat, or
mostly, yeah.
On the beach?
Not really. I wish. The other thing too is like a tuna off the beach would be miserable. A lot of the time, these things are prone to peel off, 200 yards in a run.
And that's when you're on a boat and you're able to you're going
chase them. 90% of the time, you're chasing fish.
Yeah, I was actually fishing Shinnecock Inlet, and I saw them in the inlet, bluefin. They were like big too. It was like whitewater post. There was on.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I was there watching it, and I caught a big fluke actually that day too from the beach.
Yeah, because the sand eel were loaded in there.
They were, so I saw the bluefin, but I was thinking too, the tide's going out of the inlet. If you hook something like that and it's got the tide with it, you're
doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't really matter what you fish with.
Even if you have that thing,
these 130s can put out, a comfortable 60 to 75 pounds of drag max.
But with the current,
that's double or triple what your Van Staal or Stella will put out. I've seen one of these get dumped before, emptied to the spool, and not even by an exceptional fish. There are fish that we call uncatchables, or some people call them racers, and those are just ones that don't stop swimming. You never see them. Is it a shark? Did you hook a whale? Who knows?
But
bigger
than that.
What's that?
Do they go bigger than the 130s?
No, then you get into like hydraulic reels and shit, and that's no fun unless you're commercial fishing. You know. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, please.
Yes, for your spinning setup, how much line at minimal you must have when you're spinning?
400 yards minimum.
Or how heavy?
So here's the thing. So you're gonna match your line capacity, and yeah, you're gonna to the reel that you have. So typically for like, there's a lot of, if you've seen the composition of braided line before, right? It's comprised of different strands. The amount of strands ups the diameter, and that decreases the amount of overall capacity that you can fit on a reel, right? So that's a 25,000 size reel. I fish 100-pound braid on that, and that braid, I think I have a little bit over 500 yards on, right? And if you're not fishing a big 80 wide, 130 wide, anything like that, you have to fish very heavy drag with that amount of line capacity. So that's the other thing too. Your trade-off is the more, the lighter tackle you use, right? The heavier you have to fish it, like the harder you have to fish it, more drag, more pressure, and the less margin for error there is. Again, these are predominantly for bluefin. The stuff that I brought today, I didn't bring a lot of like little yellowfin stuff because I strongly encourage anybody who wants to get into tuna fishing to buy bigger, not smaller. Like if you were going to go out and buy something, I would say the smallest I would purchase is like a 14,000 or a 10,000 size reel. Yeah, so that's that. I like my comfy is like 450 yards, and even that's kind of low. 500 to be safe.
And how much is on the 130?
That, I think like 2,800 yards. I don't know. A lot of it. It's got a lot. So that most of those reels you fill up by like how much of the spool. So that's like 2/3 braid, right, and then 1/3 top shot, monofilament top shot. So that's like kind of how we do that.
And when if you are on a spinning setup,
Mhm.
right, we were seeing the fish is like about to spooling your line, like all your lines out.
Yeah.
What do you do at that point?
So chase it, always.
If it goes deep down, not like horizontal.
Oh, if that's called sounding. If it sounds and you're gonna get dumped, hold on, dear life, cup the spool. Like you hold the spool physically. In industry we call it stop it or pop it. You're either gonna break the thing or it's gonna stop. And sometimes that extra bit of pressure breaks the fish. Sometimes if you have like 50 pounds of heat on that fish and you go up to 55 just by touching the spool or tightening it a little bit, sometimes that'll just get their head to stop. They'll stop the momentum and then they'll start in their circle. You can get them to lay up on their side and start circling up towards the boat. Now that's not the end either. They'll sound 2 or 3 times in a fight. We've had fish that we fought for 2-3 hours, get next to the boat, it looks dead as a doornail, you put the harpoon in it, and then it dumps the harpoon basket and keeps fighting for another hour and a half. So it depends on how much energy the fish has and how much pressure you can put on it reliably. But yeah. Anybody else? Any questions or anything? Seriously, anything you guys want to know. If you guys want to come up and look at the tackle that we use and ask questions on how we set up rods and reels.
I have a question on one of these.
Yeah, go ahead.
Everyone come on up here. Check it out.
Yeah, this one. You should just watch, guys. Those hooks are very sharp also.
So these things, what are these?
What's that? That's a stick bait.
A spoon? What?
Stick bait.
Stick bait, just like,
Yeah.
Just throw it out and.
So typically those shimmy on the fall. Like these will sink like this, right? And they'll fall side to side. And when you give it a big sweep, they'll kind of rock from side to side. These are poppers. This conical face will, you kind of hear it there. Yeah, the conical face will throw water, create a large disturbance on the surface. Popper bites are my favorite. They're miserable to fight fish on because obviously versus like a circle hook like this, when they eat a live bait, when they eat a live bait and you're paying out line away from the fish, right? When you apply drag to it, that hook will want to find the corner of the jaw because it's swimming away from you like this. That circle hook will want to catch like that, right? And, that's, I don't know how you would say, by design of, if you guys want to come look at this hook actually, the barb of the hook is actually pointed in, and that creates the catch in the corner of the mouth, which reduces gut hooking. It reduces the likelihood of the fish getting it in the mouth somewhere where it could potentially chafe you off. And obviously you don't have that luxury with a stick bait or something like this. They blow this thing out of the water and it could land anywhere. We've hooked them on the side of the face. You could hook them on the side.
That's part of the fun.
Yeah, sometimes too, you get this thing rarely called gift wrap, where the fish will eat it going away from the popper and the leader will actually wrap the tail. And if they don't have momentum and water over their gills, they gas out like that and you just fucking wind down on them. Crank the drag, stop them, and you just basically reel the thing. It's not easy, but it's a lot easier when they're hooked properly. Another way that we kind of mitigate that is by using stuff like these assist hooks that have a little bit of cord on them. That's like the same school of thought as the jig, where the hook isn't mounted rigidly to the body of the lure. Again, these are jigs. It's essentially, if you've never seen one, a big, stupid piece of lead.
Little butterfish jig looking things.
Yeah, those are butterfish jigs. So this is like a standard giant jig that we would use. This is assist cord. This mitigates chafing from the fish biting it. And these you drop underneath the boat. Replicates a sand eel almost to a T. And when you reel these quick up from the bottom, you get kind of a darting motion. When you stop it and let the line back out, they shimmy on their side. Looks exactly like a sand eel. These get a ton of bite, and the shape and weight of the jig will determine its action and the depth that you fish it in. So those are all kind of little things that we consider when we're fishing for them. But yeah, a lot of ways to skin a cat. Kind of depends on where you are, how you want to do it. Most of the artificial fishing that we have takes place inshore as well. It's very difficult in 800 to 1,000 foot of water to catch a fish or have a fish come up on a popper when there's so much real estate between you and where that fish is. You're kind of going off into nowhere with it unless you can see something that they're actively like feeding on. So yeah.
Show everyone the how strong that reel is.
Oh yeah, if anybody wants to know like how hard a tuna fights, I mean, I welcome anybody to try to like bend this. This is like a setup that I built for catching specifically giant tuna on artificial lures like jigs or chunking them.
We gotta go.
That's it?
Hello. Yeah. All right. That's
Okay. Guys, thank you guys very much. Yeah, I know that was kind of a lot. I'm going to give Frank my contact information for any of you guys. If you have questions or want to follow, or you have any comments, questions, concerns on anything, feel free to ask. I love helping out people that want to get into it. Thank you, guys.
That was great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That was kind of all over the place.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good, how are you?
Yeah. Sorry about that again.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Is that heavy?
Oh yeah. Here. Here, you want to show them the demonstration?
Something like today, like physically.
One person? Which one?
Oh, you can pick it up with like one hand. I can't do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's
Nope, that's heavy. That's heavy. That's heavy. That's heavy. Enjoy that.
Well, these you don't hold.
No.
That lives in a rock.
Yeah, no, that was not even.
I still can't even imagine like moving that.
Yeah,